Thanks, everybody, for joining our April edition of the Dallas Fort Worth Power Platform User Group. Very excited to have Sailaja presenting a session today. She is a Microsoft certified specialist in business process reengineering and automation using the Power Platform suite of tools. She has over 2 decades of diversified consulting experience and very passionate about providing solutions to simplify business processes. She's an active mentor on the Women in Power Group, and she also actively shares her learnings through posts on social media. So very excited to have you, Shailaja, to join our group today.
Hey everyone, thank you.
Just a quick introduction. I'm Gita Silsalam. I practice lead with the Lantern, a Microsoft partner focused on AI apps and low-code scenarios, and also business applications MVP. I do try to share some of my learnings, trials, and tribulations whenever possible. Very happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn and always looking for ways to best help in whatever capacity I can to support you all in your journey. So I'm always happy to connect on that end. Quick rundown on agenda. We are going to do some round of quick recent announcements and news. I'll cover that. Take just a couple of minutes to do that, and then we're going to hand it over back to Shailaja so we can use majority of the meetup today to talk about governance at scale. And then we'll also open it up for open forum. Now, since we are a very cozy group here, feel free to raise your hands or drop the question in the chat or come off mute and ask the question if you need. And I'll keep track of all the questions and commentary that's going on the site for you, Shailaja, as you present. So I have about 3 top news, the recent announcements that I wanted to share with the group. The first one here is the Model Context Protocol. So this enables makers to connect existing knowledge service and APIs directly from Copilot Studio. And the short form for it is MCP. Now, when connecting to an MCP server, the actions and knowledge are automatically added to the agent and are updated as functionality evolves. So this simplifies your process of building agents and reduces the time spent on maintaining the agents. So how can you enable and use that? Talk a little bit about that. MCP servers are made available to Copilot Studio using the connector infrastructure. So what that means is that you can leverage your enterprise security and governance controls, such as virtual network integration, data loss prevention controls, or even a variety of authentication methods that have been released as part of this feature. Now, it does allow you to easily connect to data sources. So whether you have a custom internal API or an external data provider, this will allow you to have a smooth and reliable integration into Copilot Studio. You also have the ability to access the marketplace for existing servers. So in addition to custom connectors and integrations, you can now tap into a growing library of pre-built MCP-enabled connectors that's available in the marketplace. So this just gives you more ways to connect with other tools and makes it just faster and easier to use them. Another benefit of this feature is the flexible action capabilities. So it does provide the tools and data to agents in a dynamic fashion. So it allows you to have greater flexibility when you want to reduce maintenance and integration costs. Now, on the right there, you see the architecture. So this architecture positions Copilot Studio as the host environment that manages the agent interactions. Now, within this environment, you can have multiple action and connector bridges that establish the connections to your Model Context Protocol servers, which in turn will facilitate or orchestrate the interaction with the external system. Now, what this does is it allows AI agents to leverage this infrastructure while maintaining simplicity and also giving you accessibility via the Copilot Studio interface. So this is a more powerful and manageable implementation at an enterprise AI level. Now, this offering does include a software development kit support. So it allows you to have further customization and flexibility within your integrations. You can create your own Model Context Protocol server. And for that, what you need to do is to integrate Copilot Studio with MCP via one of the SDKs. So that will serve as your foundation for handling your data and models. You can also tailor the server to your specific needs, and in turn, you can allow handling of custom model types and data formats as well. And then the next step, what you would do is once you have the server in place, you can create a custom connector that leads your or links your Copilot Studio environment to the model or the data source. And finally, once the server is set up and the connector is defined, you can now begin consuming the data and interacting with the models via Copilot Studio. I will be dropping some links to resources for these news as well, so make sure to read them if you have interest in learning more about or even getting your hands dirty with these features. This next feature that I'm really excited about is the code view in Power App Studio. This is now generally available. Now, this marks a significant step in enabling citizen developers and professional developers to collaborate seamlessly, enabling everyone to build faster. And some of the key features that have been introduced that were introduced as part of public preview was one is code view. So your developers can view the code for each control. So it just makes it a lot more easier to understand the app's functionality and how things work under the hood. The second feature is copy and paste. So you're able to copy any control within Studio as YAML plus PowerFX code, and then you're just able to paste it into the code editor for modifications. And similarly, when it comes to sharing, makers can use the code snippets to share their work using Microsoft Teams or email, and just enabling more collaboration and reuse. There is a link on the slide there that shows you some examples that you can use as inspiration or templates, or even you could also go in and share your own templates as well. So that little animation that you're seeing on the right shows you how someone is copying an existing screen and then just pasting it into Studio. But then they open up a notepad and then just do the same paste on the clipboard. And then you can actually see the full YAML code base. So it just gives you more insights into what PowerFX code. It gives you insights into the YAML piece. So you just have a better understanding of how these work. And you can also make changes to it, tweak it, and then paste it. So for those who are more involved in or have more interest in going the pro code route of building Power Apps, this opens doors for that. So you're not tied to the Canvas Studio UI experience for drag and dropping and modifying the PowerFX commands. You can now do it through YAML and PowerFX using one of your code editors. So just something to keep in mind. The next time you are wanting to copy paste screens and make some final tweaks, you can definitely use the code view to make some tweaks and then paste it instead of having to drag drop using the UI. This last piece of news here is the process map within Power Automate. This is currently in public preview. Process map, for those who are new to the terminology, this is designed to enhance process-centric troubleshooting and monitoring in Power Automate. So it just gives you more visibility and efficiency when you're dealing with any of the artifacts that you built in Power Automate. So it offers a more detailed in view of a process that's managed by a parent, orchestrating flow, showing all of the associated child and desktop flows. It also recognizes any structural flow elements, such as like conditions and displays flows that don't execute because of certain conditional logic error or any upstream error. So it really is very critical for understanding how a problem in part of your process can affect other parts. And it makes it more easier for you to take the appropriate countermeasures to address the issues. Right now, this feature is seamlessly integrated into the Automation Center, which is your hub for end-to-end automation monitoring and management in Power Automate. So if you haven't seen that or haven't had a chance to play around with Automation Center, if you just go to make.powerautomate.com, you will see a link that says Automation Center on your left navigational elements. And so what that does is it just provides you a comprehensive monitoring and troubleshooting experience for your automation processes across Power Automate, whether you're catering to specific personas, whether you're a maker, an operator, or a COE, or Center of Excellence team member, or a business analyst. This Automation Center serves as your centralized hub that you can use to manage and monitor automation activity within your environment. There are a few key benefits that I want to call out with this feature is accelerated troubleshooting. So you can gain full transparency into your automation process, including flows that were skipped or they were missed due to conditional logic or any other issues that it ran into. Second, having enhanced impact analysis, that's the next benefit. You're able to understand and analyze how issues affect the entire process, whether it's facilitating faster recovery or implementing more effective countermeasures. You actually have the ability to have more sophisticated impact analysis. There's stronger collaboration enabled as well as part of this feature because you now have end-to-end process visibility. So this gives you more context-rich communication with impacted teams or groups that are working through some of these artifacts, and then also accelerating recovery and driving more continuous improvement. It does provide a runs view, so which means it displays the main flow run that orchestrates the process and its child runs, allows you to track execution, identify issues, and optimize processes. So that's what you're seeing on the screenshot there. It just shows you the flow of events and what went wrong where, and then it just gives you more insights into how long it took for something to run. It has the whole process mapped out for you. Now, it also gives you a design time process hierarchy view with connected sub-processes. So if you have any child runs that also show up, so you have quicker insights into, in cases of where you have aggregated process data and configurations, you can actually get a better overview of what happened there. And then there's also a run tab integration. So what that does is you're used to seeing the flow runs page, but they've enhanced that with the new hover option, the new run row. So there are a couple of new icons that let you create or view the process maps for the selected process run and its child run. Definitely a cool feature. It's in public preview now. So something to keep in mind, it's not generally available. It's still in public preview. So expect for things to not work not work smooth all the time, but definitely a good one to go check it out and try out and see how well it aligns with your goals for managing for automate from an automation center perspective. Alrighty, I will.
Seems really powerful.
Yeah.
Probably I could even use it in once you have a successful flow run. Probably you also use it in documentation. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can definitely take screenshots and add that to your documentation on how your flows are expected to run. Yeah, so definitely a good point. Now I'm ready to hear more about governance at scale. Shailaja, the platform is all yours.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining at this time. Good evening. My name is Sailaja Mantripragada. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I see it.
All right. So today we'll be talking about Power Platform governance. This is it's a topic close to my heart. I mean, it's been, so I'll give you introduction about who I am and we will talk about more about governance. So my name is Sailaja Mantripragada. I am a Power Platform specialist, Microsoft certified trainer, and my entire career has been with Microsoft technologies, and so I've been working with SharePoint. Started as a .NET developer and did a lot of SharePoint development and business process engineering. And last 7-8 years has been focused completely on SharePoint. So I live in Frisco, Texas. I'll share the deck with you at the end of the session. And here's my LinkedIn. I love to collaborate with other technologists in the same space, help newbies, help anybody who's a career switcher, mentor people. So I'm trying to show up and be helpful where I can. So today's agenda. So we'll be talking about what governance is in general, and then why it would matter for Power Platform. We'll discuss the basic governance framework, and I'd like to focus quite a bit today on the key stakeholders in Power Platform and what each of the key stakeholders look for when they have a Power Platform practice. And then we'll talk best practices, and then we'll open it for Q&A. So why governance matters? Before we get there, so the reason I say it's close to my heart is, so I come from a SharePoint world, and I've been a consultant so I got a chance to work with several customers. And look, once you have a tool in hand, it's like a child's play, right? Power Platform is a really powerful yet approachable tool. And what that does is once you get in your hands, it everybody is just trying to play with it, and it used to be the same with creating SharePoint sites. And once there's a sprawl, like a lot of people interested in trying it out without any governance, it's everybody has a car and you get on the road and there's no rules on the road. What happens there? That's what happens when there's no governance. So it's so I've seen many scenarios where it becomes a chaotic a little bit, and then we realize that I think there should be governance. So we take a step back and try to control the chaos. So whenever I go with the customers, my first thought is, what governance do we have in place? So that's where any Power Platform, you go in as a developer, as a business analyst, whatever role you go in when you're working with Power Platform, it's a good idea to find out from the organization what governance is in place. So why it matters, right? Like I said, control and oversight. Citizen developers might create duplicate apps, inefficient flows in that they're still citizen developers and they do not have complete knowledge about what a flow could do and not. So governance ensures there's visibility into what's being built and who's building it. And then security is a major part of governance. Power Platform provides like 1,000+ connectors. So apps and flows often access sensitive data. You can access customer information, financial information, health information, depending on where you're working. So governance helps you to ensure data loss prevention, and you setting it up such that you're predefining who can build what, who can create new environments. Like it gets to the next point and helps prevent shadow IT. So basically, shadow IT is, how every company has an IT security team that takes care of everything security within the organization. What happens when you have Power Platform, any cloud tool, right? For that matter, what happens is it's its own thing. So IT is not fully aware of IT security team is not fully aware of the admin, how the security compliance features of Power Platform. It's important to designate and say, this is a Power Platform admin. They're going to control the data loss prevention. And that's so in order to prevent shadow IT and ensure data outside IT's control is still monitored. That's another thing. So environment management. Actually, yeah, as I go, I can get into more detail. So environment management is a very important piece, like I said. And the way you can create new apps, if it's not monitored and controlled, multiple environments can be created and there could be an environment sprawl. So it's important to ensure that there are no orphan environments and it's taken care of. And then as the first thing with Power Platform is, once Power Platform is licenses are bought and everything is ready to go, everybody prays that there should be user adoption, right? Once there is user adoption from the organization, it's important to, because as it scales, it's important to scale responsibly, bring in standardization, naming conventions, solution templates, reusable components, and everything in such a way that it's happening in a streamlined fashion. And in order to ensure all these, training, documentation, and best practices plays a major role, because citizen developers, like we discussed, people like us, we could, once we go in and we have this, we know that Power Platform can do stuff, and let's get started. It is very important to organize, identify interested employees as citizen developers and train them and empower them while building guardrails. So Let's now talk about key stakeholders in governance. So, Power Platform we've decided that we will be using Power Platform for digital transformation in our organization. We bought the licenses, everything is set up. So, let's see who are the key stakeholders and what matters to each of them. So, the CIO would want to ensure that there's ROI, right? Let's just list them down. So there's the CIO, the CISO, which is the Chief Security Officer, and then the IT operations and admin team, business unit leaders who are involved in digital transformation, and the actual makers and citizen developers. A little later in the session, we will be talking about what each of them would want to see as an outcome. And let's get into the details of the governance framework. So it's very important to create a vision of why we chose our platform and what we are trying to accomplish in term as an organization, and how do we want to enable the different business units. So then you need to build a strategy and a vision document. So governance it's a whole framework, right? We are setting guardrails while not creating roadblocks for developers. That's the whole goal of the entire governance framework. So the first one would be environment strategy. Environments are a major part, almost like the key pillar of Power Platform. Building a strategy around environments, who will be the creators, what is the process that we're going to follow in requesting new environments, and the role-based access and everything. Data loss prevention policies, DLP stands for data loss prevention. And these policies are very important, like we discussed a little bit earlier, in order to ensure data leaks do not happen. And ALM processes is another major thing. So it's a good idea to set up the application lifecycle management process. So each time anybody in the organization builds Power App or a Power BI dashboard, how are we planning to deploy it from dev to testing, staging to production environments? And then how are we building visibility, like monitoring and alerts and automation within the governance so that the right people are alerted at the right time in case something wrong happens? And then communication and training. So establishing a good environment strategy. So first thing, like I mentioned earlier, is we would need to identify Power Platform admins, ensure they are trained enough to understand the Power Platform architecture, they're proper certified people. Identify your admins and assign them the Power Platform admin role, and then restrict creation of any new production environments specifically to the admins. You do not want anybody to go and create an environment, especially a production environment. Use default environment only for simple productivity applications. So basically, every Power Platform installation comes with a default environment. And the goal of the default environment is for just POCs and trying out anything new and actually creating simple productivity applications for use within small teams, like an issue tracker or like a content management tracking tool, something very simple. Productivity application can be built in the default environment. And then as part of a good environment strategy, it's important to set up DLP policies at tenant and environment levels. So basically, what I can in some time, I could take you to the Power Platform Admin Center to show you what it means. So you can set up the data loss prevention policies at the tenant and the environment levels. So when you go to that section, it allows you to choose different connectors and say, you can block some connectors. You can say these two connectors cannot be used in combination. We can put several restrictions and set up the data loss prevention policies for secure work. And now is there a message I'm missing? Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay. And then it's a very good idea to establish a process for requesting new environments. So there could be organizations with several thousands of employees with different departments and business units. It would be a very good idea to set up a process where they are requesting why they want to build, why they want a specific environment, whether it's for just POCs and trainings, individual use, or it's a specific department asking for a dev test prod environment for their solutions. That way, you are streamlining the process and able to gain visibility on what environments are being created. So let's understand a little more about DLP policies. So DLP policies, they protect sensitive information from unauthorized access. So for example, you are building something for the HR team and they could have confidential information about maybe new hires or some positions that haven't been generally open yet, but they do have information, things like that. And you're building an application or a flow that uses social media connectors, for example, to just communicate to the world that we are hiring, right? And in that process, you do not want any confidential HR information to be leaked. So what DLP policies do is they help organization comply with legal and regulatory requirements. And they can be customized, like I mentioned. You can say, do not use these particular connectors together. Do ensure that these particular SharePoint sites are not accessible at various levels. You can also set monitoring and alerts. You can also use Power Automate to further automate governance with just set up a workflow that notifies your admins when some leakage or something goes wrong with data, that they're alerted immediately. And it is also very important to regularly update DLP policies to ensure ongoing data protection. Another thing, so the next thing we were talking about is monitoring and control. So my Power Platform comes with something called COE Starter Kit, or it was also called COE Toolkit. COE stands for Center of Excellence. So it's basically a bunch of reports and charts and that give you visibility into, like you see here in this image, it tells you how many environments we have, how many production environments, complete division of different types of environment, and then how many flows, apps, custom connectors, who are the makers. It also shows you the owners of each of them. And this helps different stakeholders get visibility into how your Power Platform is being utilized and or underutilized or wrongly utilized. It's a very good. It's very important to install and operationalize the COE starter kit for visibility. And another thing is the application lifecycle management processes. Not sure how many the audience in our call today I'm not sure how many are new versus experienced solution builders. But basically, everything in Power Platform is built in solutions. So, solutions are the mechanism for implementing lifecycle management. So, you use them to distribute components across environments through export and import. So, for example, you are building a complete digital transformation application for a company. And so you build one model driven app, a Canvas app, maybe 3 to 4 flows, and anything else, right? Like database tables, Power BI dashboards, reports, everything. You start by creating a solution first and adding all the artifacts into the solution. So when you decide that you have everything, you you export the entire solution and import it into a different environment. So from dev to test or test to prod. I don't know if we can cover everything in this session, but just ALM is a big topic. I've provided some links to how to get into the details, but a manual way of moving solutions from environment A to B is using export and import. And what application lifecycle management is that you would have a source control, and then Microsoft provides pipelines so that you are able to automate the process of exporting and importing from different environments. And then another important piece to keep in mind is everything about a solution, or like a solution, the artifacts within it, everything stays in a Dataverse database. Any pipelines, the artifacts within the solution, including the solution itself, everything is stored in Dataverse. And you could use CI/CD platforms such as GitHub, Azure, DevOps, which is the most popular, to automate your build, test, production, the whole deployment pipeline. And since Power Platform, as much as it supports pro developers and makers to build solutions, experience makers, it also puts the tool in hands of business users. If you're a project manager, you're a business analyst, and you know the pain points that are probably using Excel to do, you are a very good candidate if you're slightly tech savvy to be a citizen developer and build your own productivity tools. So, effective communication and training is very important. That, like, there are two parts, right? There are all these stakeholders who need to be communicated, informed of anything new that we're bringing into the organization. And then it's important to train these end users, the citizen developers, actually train the citizen developers and empower them closely in order for them to build effective and scalable solutions. And so the training sessions, and then ensuring that you take feedback from your training sessions and iterate through this process. So before I conclude, we will discuss perspectives of different stakeholders. So there's the CIO of the organization, right? What he or she would like to look at is what is the strategic value of low code implementation in our organization, and how does it, right? The CIO would want to ensure it aligns with the IT roadmap. So IT has a certain roadmap for a particular year, for example, and then they decide to go modern and go low code and want to use low code technology, Power Platform for digital transformation. So you would like to see the IT roadmap. The concerns for a CIO would be the return on investment, enterprise architecture, ensure what is the roadmap for organizational adoption, what integration capabilities does it have, and how the platform scalability, how scalable it is, and what is the team doing for the platform. to be scalable. And then we have the CISO. So the CISO is Chief Information Security Officer. So for them, the concern would be, do we have chances for a data leak? And are we able to ensure compliance? It could be like if you're touching health data, is the platform HIPAA compliant? Things like that. So GDPR compliance. Microsoft does at the platform level have to provide compliances, but we also need to make sure from an organizational perspective that security, risk management, and data leakage is taken care, and how we're doing identity and access management within. So who are the users, who has what access, what authorization, are we giving access to external users, things like that. And then IT operations, right? What are they looking for? From the operations perspective, they would like to say, is it platform health and performance? How do we do support troubleshooting? What if somebody comes and says, help, like, do we have a change management process in place? Center of Excellence Toolkit is a good place to start. Like I said, it provides you the visibility. And then you have Azure Monitor and application insights, the application lifecycle management. These are the key tools that the IT operations can use to ensure everything happens smoothly. And imagine you're a business leader, right? So you are from the HR team or you're from the what else? At any business unit, you want to make sure there's agility in building the applications. You're able to iterate and go through the requirements in a process, in a streamlined process. Ensure the business leader would want to ensure that the teams are empowered, and they will also need a visibility into apps and flows, enablement program, and they would want to ensure that governance acts as a guardrail and not roadblock. You do not each time, so governance shouldn't be like each time a citizen developer wants to build something, there's a roadblock, right? They should be enabled well enough, empowered properly, and still guardrails are applied where applicable. And then the citizen developer or the maker perspective. This is a major concern, frustration with bureaucracy, depending on how big the adoption is and how big the organization is, bureaucracy could play a major role, and it shouldn't be getting in the way of development. And because it's a quick tool, they could desire for quick solutions and may not follow best practices. So, and that's again a reminder that they need to be supported. Training and community is very important. Arranging guidelines such that they use templates and reusable components, and probably have a center space for any developer to, like a go-to portal where they can see what's the UI standards that to be used, anything, any rules and regulations and guidelines that we have set up for the makers. It's good to have a portal set up that they can all reach out to. So just reviewing the best practices. Start with DLP policies and environment strategy. Use the COE starter kit. Involve all stakeholders early and provide enablement and guardrails, and iterate this process to improve continuously. So I have included further resources and I'll add links to it when I decide to share it. So that's about it.
Sailaja, thank you so much. I think there are some really good, a couple of golden nuggets in what you shared, right? I think some of the key highlights that I loved in what you shared were why governance matters, right? I love how you emphasize that it's not just about ensuring security or control, but it's also about sustainable low code growth. Like you want to balance innovation with the right amount of risk management. And then And I think your slide on this stakeholder-centric approach is very important for us to keep in mind, right? From the perspective of whether it's a CIO, CISO, IT ops, or business leaders or makers involved, a very important reminder for us that successful governance is about aligning expectations and not just enforcing rules. You don't want it to feel like you're just enforcing rules end of the day. It should feel like you're actually aligning expectations. And then also from a framework and maturity standpoint, you walked us through there's a clear actionable framework, right? These are practical steps that you have to take, like whether you leverage COE as a starter kit for visibility, or you use DataWorks and DevOps for strong ALM, or even starting with some of those base DLP policies and environment strategy, and then just continuously improve. You don't have to have everything in place; just have the critical ones in place, and then just improve continuously. And then I think one other thing that I thought important that you brought up, I'm glad you brought that up, is the importance of mentorship just within your community, having a community practice within the org, and then having templates and then a process to have some sort of feedback loop so you can empower your makers to make the right choices and not end up having like governance fatigue, right, in the process of implementing these in place. And I think one of the biggest takeaway for me from your presentation here is governance should not feel like you're slowing down some of the initiatives within the org. It should be about setting up guardrails, but those guardrails should enable agility within the business and should feel like we're all aligned on expectations and this is to balance innovation, and we shouldn't feel like this is creating roadblocks in the process. But yeah, thank you so much. I love how you hit on all the key reminders and points that people need to keep in mind when you get started with governance.
And also, I think when new citizen developers see something like this, a presentation like this, they will get an understanding into why, for example, they're building an app and they see that HTTP request, some kind of action is blocked. They'll get an understanding of why different stakeholders would be concerned about why blocking happens and instead of getting frustrated.
Yeah, very true. Anyone else have any questions, or thoughts, or any comments on just how governance works? You feel free to unmute and share your thoughts there. I think I saw Priya, you go unmute first, and then I think next we'll go to Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Sailaja. It is really informative, and understanding of the governance is really important for different stages of roles within the company. So each person or each role has to understand what it matters. So yeah, thank you so much. It's really helpful for me.
Great, thank you.
Right, Jeff, I see you have your hands raised up.
All right, and thank you for the presentation. It was really impactful. I've got a couple of questions, really. I think the first one will be, it's not like a question or a favor. Do we have access to this presentation after this? Because I would love to have a hold on to your presentation. It's given to stuff that I didn't think about in terms of the perspectives of other stakeholders. That's one. Yeah. And then
Do you want me to? I can drop the presentation here in the chat, I think.
I was thinking I could add a few resource links in the last slide.
Go ahead. Yeah.
And then probably we could share it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. And I can also post it as a resource on the meetup as well. But yeah, you definitely on your post, and then I'll also upload it. Yeah.
Right, cool.
Sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to. I want to finish your thought there.
No, that's fine. It gave me time to remember my question. The presentation was quite high level because there was a lot to touch anyway. One question, one of them is you spoke about naming conventions. How much is too much naming conventions, and was okay? Because when I think of naming conventions, I think of how deep as prefixes for solutions. So I don't know whether that matters really, but yeah, that's one question. Do you want to answer that before I ask the next one?
Yeah, sure. So I built a lot of Canvas apps. So when we talk naming conventions, like you said, start from the solution, right? Definitely once there are multiple solutions or apps or any artifacts in your bucket, it's important to, okay, let me take a step back. So when you say naming conventions for solutions, from a practical standpoint, I do not know if everybody will follow a certain naming convention for the solution name. For the publisher, probably yes. It's important to create a publisher with a certain standard template within an application or within a Canvas app or a Power Automate flow. When you're creating actions and steps, probably creating variables within apps and flows, I would say it is very important to follow some naming conventions. It's just making sure all your screens start with SCR, all your buttons start with a BTN. When there is, for example, when there's a Canvas app with maybe 20, 30 screens, and then there's a lot of controls within it, it's not easy to rename everything. But the specific ones that you use frequently, and that matter majorly, it's very important to rename them and follow a naming convention.
Yeah, I agree with what she's saying. And I think another thing that I found to be helpful when we build solutions is just being consistent, and specifically for solutions, right? When you're packaging up your artifacts and you have a solution in different environments, it's just making sure you have a consistent pattern. Like, number one is you want to make sure that you have a publisher prefix, not let the default publisher be the one. Make sure that you have a custom publisher so it's just easy to associate whether it's a business unit or a team that the solution is being used for, and then making sure that the name reflects the specific business area or project. Like, for example, maybe it's a sales solution or it's an HR solution, right? And then another thing that you can think of is making sure the name also indicates the solution type. Sometimes what happens is we build the parent solution, which will have things, and sometimes we may have extensions in a different solution. So it helps to call out the prefix, the group that you're building it for, and then the solution type. So you may have two solutions having the same name for the first three words, but then the last would tell you, this is my base solution, and this is my solution with extensions or with connectors. So I think that is the environment tag. I've seen that being used in different ways. Sometimes I've seen people add an environment tag to their solutions, like whether it's dev, test, UAT, or prod. But you can also argue on the other side, if it's you're in the dev environment, then you don't need to name every solution with the prefix, with the suffix or prefix of dev, because you're already in that environment. So that's also something to just some things that I've tried in the past and has worked well.
Thank you. Two more questions. The second question is, you mentioned limits to what can be built in personal productivity. Yeah, so what's the limit and how do you do that? What's the environment strategy if you want to move like projects being built in personal productivity to probably like team productivity kind of thing?
To their own environments?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I'm looking at it from like a governance perspective organizationally. Yeah, where you want to limit the amount of development within the dev default environment and then like manage where there are multiple users being shared. Sorry, there's like an app that is being shared to multiple users, like more than one, maybe 2 or 5, I don't know. I just wanted to hear from your perspective what that can be.
okay. So, Geeta, you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, I can definitely share a couple of things. And I'm glad you brought that question up, Jeff, because that is one of the DeFi environment in Power Platform is often the most misunderstood environment. There are some clear limitations when it comes to using anything beyond personal productivity or experimentation. One thing within that you want to keep in mind with default environment is that all users are makers in the environment, which means anyone can, but that's the default behavior. Anyone can go in and build apps or flows, which can eventually lead to sprawl and governance issues if not managed. And then there is no real ALM available. The default environment does not support like structured dev test prod model. So you can't set up pipelines to manage solution promotion effectively over there. And then in the default environment, there are limitations around the DLP policies that you can scope.
Oh, is it?
That can
Because
what's
they're
that?
set at the environment level, and there is no DLP policies for the
Yeah.
default.
So that
Oh,
can
is
pose
it?
security and like compliance. And then because everybody has access to their environment, I think you fall into that trap where users can share apps and flows without centralized oversight. And if you have any specific security or IT guidelines, then it's going to violate that. So just some things to keep in mind from limitations. Anything you would like to add, Shailaja?
Yeah, I think all that. And then I think it's a good idea to start from when you're building an app in the default environment. Before you start, I think it's a good idea to think about one thing, like she said, the security, like how anything that is accessing a particular department's data should not be built in the default environment. It should be completely personal productivity tools. Like I said, issue tracker, you do some testing, and you want to make sure everything is logged in somewhere so that it's easy to find things like that, which is like you mentioned, Jeff, like maybe a few users. I don't know if there's a number associated to how many users it should be, but
Yeah, I was looking at how you can restrict that. Is there a way you can restrict it at all in the different environments? Do you know?
from what I know, everybody has access to the default environment. Anybody who has a maker license will be able to go and create an app in the default environment. That is why education training and now the whole process is important before you. I'd say this is an ideal scenario which doesn't happen in many places, but the ideal case would be train your developers or citizen developers first, tell them, guide them to all this, guide them to that portal where everything is in, and then open it up for development. That would be an ideal case, but it doesn't usually happen. And people only learn as they go. But yeah, if you think it's confidential information, it has a lot of users accessing it, it's a department specific information, PHI, PII, anything important, do not build it on. And even the complexity, right? How large, if you want the solution to be scalable, right? A simple issue tracker doesn't need to be scalable. It's just a productivity tool. But if you are looking to build something complex or something that you envision being used within, so things like that, I think it's a good idea to go and request for a dev test fraud environment and get started.
Yeah, and another thing that I'd like to add is you don't want to block people from using the default environment because it's meant to primarily act as a sandbox for users who are trying to explore apps or automate. So it allows you to encourage your workforce to experiment, and it helps citizen devs to get more comfortable with these tools. It's always, that's how I always recommend customers to treat this as an entry point for grassroots innovation, right? Where the solutions are ready for formal environments when it gets to a spot where these citizen devs are experimenting and they build something that will be very helpful for multiple departments or groups or maybe for another business process, then move it from that to a different, because now you see there is actually business value and this has moved on from being a sandbox place because this is
Just a proof of concept to
yeah. And I understand when there can be risks around it because there's no granular level DLPs you can put, but there are some basic policies you can keep in place. Like you can block connectors like Twitter or it's called X now, or email or things like that, where you don't want them to be leveraging any personal connections or social media connections along with some line of business data. You don't want someone to accidentally expose some business data because they just dropped something into their Google Drive. So I think as long as it's more for low risk apps, less sensitive data they're working with, and doesn't need much of IT support or hovering, then see if you can enable use of use for the citizen devs in that environment.
I think there is also an option to be set up policies such that apps created in the default environment can be deleted. Inactive applications can be automatically deleted in a certain time frame. I've seen that happening in a couple of organizations. So, in order to ensure there's no sprawl, we don't have too many orphaned applications, I think there are some things that you can set up as guardrails for the default environment, but it will be open.
Thank you. My last question is about source control, but I'll pack it to just give other people opportunities to ask questions, if that's okay. Thank you so much for answering my questions so far. Yeah.
Sure. So, did you say your question is about source control now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The question is about source control and how you can use Azure DevOps as that. Do you have to manually export it and then put it in? This is an area I'm trying to explore. I'm quite new to it, so pardon my ignorance. So do you have to export it manually and import it to Azure DevOps, or is there a way you can automatically? So I'm trying to mirror. There's this 2 minute save that the whole environment is saved, but I just want solution based instead. Do you have to manually do it, or is there a way you can automatically set that up?
There is a way. So, one thing is, I think, like I mentioned earlier, it is the whole ALN process is only available if you are using Dataverse, right, Geeta? If you have SharePoint as your data source, then probably it's not completely automated.
Not very straightforward. Yeah, you may have to do some tweaks here and there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But with the Dataverse environment, if you're starting from there are 3 ways. One is the manual export and import. And when you're using Azure DevOps, there is an option called pipelines, which is automated. You set it up. And then there is also, what is the other? I think that there's a complete automation, the Azure DevOps automation that you can set up for seamless movement between different environments.
Sorry, you mentioned because just for the benefit of just for the benefit of organizations like we that work at organizations that have to use like cheaper data sources like SharePoint, is there a link that we can have access to for those type of tweaks that we can use to implement that?
Yeah, sure. I also work for organizations that use SharePoint as the data source. Not everybody is ready to budget up and go for Dataverse, but you can still achieve a lot. And there are ways. So, yeah, I can probably add a couple of links in that presentation for that.
Thank you.
Those are some really good questions. Thank you, Jeff, for I do see Vishnu, you have your hands up. Yep, please feel free to unmute.
So thank you so much for this opportunity. Building on Jeff's questions, my organization completely uses SharePoint. We thought of moving to Dataverse, but the licensing is bit of thing we are discussing. Okay, keeping that aside, we build. So previously, when I used to work at tech firms, I used to build like larger applications, but this firm is more like smaller applications. So my question is, in 21 or 22, we got a feature where we could connect the Power App to a Git and like we could have multiple developers working on it. But few weeks ago, I saw a LinkedIn article or somewhere that Microsoft is going to stop this and it's going to manage environment or something that like we can only connect it to DevOps or something. I didn't get that thing correctly. So if you guys have any idea, can you just explain to me like if Microsoft is going to shut down this Git thing or?
Are you already using that? Are you
No.
co-authoring using Git?
No, not right now, but we are strongly thinking of doing it because we have some larger applications that are going to come into a pipeline. And so if we
You
were
want
thinking
multiple
that like, yeah, we want to strategize this at first only. So link up with Git, do the solutions and all at the start so that like afterwards we don't have any troubles down the line.
If you can drop the idea in the chat, I do know part of your question. I do have information on a part of your question, but not complete information because For one, I think managed environments are for they're premium, right?
Yes,
Uh,
definitely. For that also we need Dataverse. It is not
yeah, right. That's
it
what I was.
yeah, definitely.
So I can research and get back instead of
Sure.
giving you
So
half information.
yeah, sure. I can also send you the link where I saw that LinkedIn post or something. Maybe you can understand it
Mm.
better and
Yeah,
me.
I have read a little bit about it. That's why I know half of it, but I didn't
Yeah.
deep dive it.
Even I know half
Mhm.
and I couldn't get what is the complete thing.
I posted my LinkedIn in the presentation, so link to my LinkedIn page. So maybe we can connect and discuss further.
Sure, definitely sure. Thank you so much.
Some good problems to have, huh? Yeah, I don't think I don't think I've heard about GitHub support being deprecated for Power Platform ELM, but then there are some nuances to using it, just depending on your use case. Yeah, but it would be, if you can share that article, maybe that would help differentiate what is actually going away. Maybe it's not the whole thing. Maybe there are certain command lines or CLI that's getting replaced by something else. That's a possibility.
Because if you're using Git for, are you saying like you would be manually storing your solutions in there? Is that the plan? You
You
probably use it as a
co-authoring only. So
version control. Is it also for version control
no,
and source of truth, or?
no. So we are planning to use Git only for the co-authoring purpose, so that like we can have multiple developers working on it at the same time, but not as a version control thing. Version control thing, we are still like taking export files and doing it because we have SharePoint, like we don't have Dataverse
Yeah.
right now.
The
So
data source will not move with the solution
move
anyway.
anyway. So that's why like we are still going to the old route where we are taking the zip files and doing it manually onto dev and production. I know that is old school, but that
Yeah,
works for us.
sometimes meat of the hour.
It works for us.
Where there was a feature that was announced or released last November, I think, where you can collaborate on Canvas apps. This is Canvas apps, so what I'm talking about. Collaborating on Canvas apps within Power App Studio. So you have this concept of co-presence where you can see who's working on that app.
Yeah, that is
Um,
what.
yeah, so that is there. So that's something that they've enabled natively within the app. You can see that it's, that if someone's already working on a specific piece and you're also on it, then, it'll show like it's read only if someone is editing. But you can select an override and become the main author if you want and gain editing rights. So I think that feature might just enable you to use it natively within the studio and not have to depend on GitHub for co-authoring.
I was
So
thinking maybe GitHub is not mandatory to enable
yeah,
co-authoring is what I'm thinking. Probably I'll do a post on this.
yeah.
Yeah, so the feature that you are talking, yeah, that is already currently live.
Okay.
Wherein like people can also like multiple people can directly go into the application.
Yeah.
So previously when Power App started in like 21, 22, you cannot go into the app itself. So if like somebody is using the app,
It's
it
wrong.
would show a prompt like somebody else is using it, something like that. But right now you can go into it, but it will be frozen. So you cannot like do any editing because somebody else is using it. Yeah, that is
Okay.
natively available. But what I am trying to do is like multiple people can work on it simultaneously. So not
Different
just
streams.
looking multiple
Yeah. Yep.
simultaneously. So
Yeah.
this was something we used to have, but like that one post rattled me that nothing.
All right. I think we're at time here. And I know, Shailaja, thanks for staying an extra 20 minutes for us to help answer some of these questions. But thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your weekday evening to join our user group. And as always, thank you for your support. And we will be having another one next month. I don't have the date yet, but expect to be around first or second week in May. And I'm wishing you all a good rest of your evening. And I hope to see you all again next month.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.